here's Brody Brazil.
I will admit it's kind of weird how this particular video came to be because it's a thought I've had for quite some time. In fact, it's something I experienced firsthand in life, but I didn't really get the motivation to put all this together until I saw the piece by Sam Blum in The Athletic, and the headline reads, "When MLB playoffs arrive, sidelined local broadcasters ache as they listen to the national call." I was around this for a lot of different seasons in the 2010s when the Sharks, they'd have a great regular season. I'd get to coverage start to finish on the regional broadcasts, and even we would have, I think, rounds 1 and 2 of the playoffs on our coverage, on our channel. But then as soon as you got to the conference final and maybe the Stanley Cup final, the national networks would take over exclusively. And so although it wasn't the end of the road for the team, it was the end of the road for our work and our coverage, and it kind of felt weird to just say, well, that's it, and we don't get to see it all the way through. So I'll give you some of the perspectives here from broadcasters and maybe how to fix this problem, and also some criticisms of national broadcasts, which are always going to be around no matter what sport it is, no matter what network it is. I'll give you some of the things that fans care about most, but also how to maybe get past those in the future and with technology moving forward. The takeover happens like this. In the regular season with most of the major pro sports, excluding football because every game is national there, but baseball, hockey, and basketball, the regular season, the majority of each team's games are broadcast in the same places. A local station, a regional sports network, there are local rights paid for by stations and networks to those teams to be able to cover and carry those games. Well, in the playoffs, that's more of a league-run situation, and so playoff games are all usually national exclusives. And in the case of Major League Baseball, they work with Fox, they work with ESPN, and they work with Turner in terms of TBS. And look, they all do a great job. We're about to get into some of the fan criticisms, but let me say, there are some commonalities of postseason games, which makes the coverage and the production of them tremendous. Several additional camera angles, like we've got the umpire cam, we've got all the sky cam stuff, we've got drone footage, like live drone angles that you'd never see before, super slow motion replays on basically every camera angle. I know field reporters maybe aren't for everybody, but quite often they do bring additional elements to the table. They help you appreciate and enjoy the broadcast more. The studio coverage is great on the national postseason games. And whether you like them or not, sometimes the in-game interviews are tremendous. I realize they're not always a home run, but a single and a double here and there, they're worth their time. Anyway, it's not to discount the work of the national productions. They do a really good job, technically. But for somebody like Gary Cohen, a 36-year Mets broadcaster, here's the way he puts it, as being one of the people that delivers the play-by-play, delivers the story and the narrative of these games during the regular season, but not up until the very end like right now. He said to The Athletic, quote, "It's kind of like taking a transatlantic voyage on a ship and then getting thrown overboard a mile from shore," Cohen said with an unhappy chuckle. It's weird. You can kind of hear him saying that, like reading the quote, you can kind of see like it's not pleasurable to work all that season and to gain the storylines and to really feel entrenched in the team through the good days, the dog days, and then the very end, but then to be cut off at the most important games. And I'll also say, I do understand these various main fan criticisms of national broadcasts. And again, this doesn't just apply to baseball. This could be hockey or basketball or maybe even football, but it's not the faces and voices that you've watched talk about your team for months. And so the unfamiliar aspect alone is enough to throw people off. Now, I'm not saying that's right or wrong or that the broadcasters are any less on the national level, because that's not it. They are usually the very best of the best. It's just the lack of familiarity which kind of throws the viewer off. So that's already kind of lighting up some red flags and some lamps in your head. Then there's the fact that neutral calls always make it feel like the broadcasters are rooting for the other team, as much as in reality they don't care, or they might be pulling for your team too. But when somebody hits a home run on your team, of course you want to hear the voice get high and the excitement come in, and you want to hear that level of enthusiasm. You want to hear that for your team when they do something well. But how about when the other team hits a home run or takes a late lead or walks it off at the end of the game? How can the broadcaster also not put that very same enthusiasm into that? And then fans will go back and measure the perceived level of enthusiasm. What Was that person more excited for them or us? When they scored or when we scored? You know what I mean? It's an impossible situation for a broadcaster to try and play everything up and also feel neutral at the same time. And this is not new. This has been going on for decades. But I can tell you from those who do this, it's a huge challenge for them to try and balance it to perfection and get it right. Also this, announcers have not watched the team's entire season, either team that they're covering, and they don't have all the backstories. They don't remember this player that's so red hot right now in the playoffs and what a slump they were in the entire month of August and maybe why that's special here and now. Or all the little things, all the little details that you couldn't possibly study or prepare for. They're only ingrained in your mind because you were around it for a majority of 162. And these national broadcasters, like, to their defense, how could they be? How could they possibly understand every team's season? They didn't know who was going to make the playoffs. They didn't know who'd be calling this series. So they're kind of up against it in that. And then I will also say, lastly, another huge criticism is most teams don't end up winning the final game in the final series and round. Only one team gets to win the Lombardi Trophy, the Stanley Cup, anyway, the Commissioner's Trophy. But the point is, when all those teams lose or get eliminated, the national broadcast doesn't seem to be graceful with the exit. They don't seem to put the losing team to bed in the right way. It's always about celebrating the winner and just shoving the loser off to the side, which, what are you supposed to do? Right? It's a hard situation for these national broadcasts to make it feel genuine and to make it feel right. Brian Anderson, who does a great job calling baseball for TBS, he's done so for 17 years now in the playoffs, and this is a perfect quote. I mean, he says this so well, and he's truthful about it. Quote, "No national announcer, me included, will ever be as knowledgeable and tuned in to the culture of a team as the local announcer or announcers. To call your team in the biggest moments is something we all desire, and Brian knows that because he works for the Brewers." So here's a possible solution that Brian mentioned in being quoted by The Athletic. Anderson cited Turner's Team Stream model that's being used during the NCAA men's basketball tournament as an option, quote, worth pursuing. That would allow local crews to combine for an altcast where local fans could hear their broadcaster. We live in an age where people watch the Manning cast. Yeah, you're watching Monday Night Football, but you're also watching the Manning brothers do their own entire show simulcasted with the game up and the graphics up and a little bit of the natural sound up. They're kind of just doing their own broadcast. We live in the perfect, appropriate time, and there's a bunch of technology and there's a bunch of platforms and channels and streams and ways to do this. Like, this to me seems like the most easy and fitting solution to give everybody what they want. And speaking of that, I'll kind of close out the video by saying, what does everybody even want here? Like, what are the objectives we're trying to accomplish? Number one, I do still think there should be a proper national call that is neutral and that is a great broadcast, well produced, like just how they've been doing it, but it's made specifically for the third-party fan. Okay, you're not a Cleveland fan or a Yankees fan. You're like me from California. You're just observing, and yeah, I guess I do have a horse in that race. I'm a big Stephen Vogt guy. But I'd probably be privy to the national broadcast because I just want to hear both teams covered maybe neutrally. And I don't necessarily need to hear the Yankees side of it or the Guardians side of it. I will sit and enjoy the national broadcast. But the ability to have local broadcasters either incorporated evenly into the national broadcast or put separately in tandem, like in parallel with the national broadcast, to do those altcasts, that's it. That's how you fix this. And you would be providing what everybody wants, the best coverage for the most important games of the season, right? Like, why get this not exactly right for the most important games of the season? So there you see the Mets broadcast crew, and great photo of them. It's kind of a telling photo for this story and this headline. When the playoffs arrive, yeah, for any sport, a lot of local broadcasters just sit there and go, wish I could be a part of that. And they generally are. They host a studio show, a pre and a post-game show, or sometimes they switch to radio. By the way, radio is not affected by this in nearly the same way as television is, but it's unique to television broadcasters. I totally get it. I was around it. I felt that into the road feeling and still covering them as they go. But I think time is going to fix this. I do think you will see more of that altcast method being undertaken by a lot of networks. All right, that's the end of this video. Really appreciate you for making it here to the end. Thumbs up down below. That helps me and this video and this channel. And also go down there and make sure you've already hit that subscribe button. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.